Coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, based off of our previous episode, going through all those scenarios, maybe the Hornets could be buyers at the deadline. What would it take for the Hornets to be buyers at the NBA trade deadline? Plus, Mark Williams has some comments about his time with the Hornets. It's not a Locked On Hornets pod unless we argue about Mark. And then we'll rummage through the Sicko Satchel, all today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com, also a producer on Yahoo Sports Daily with Jason Fitz and Caroline Fenton. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Wes and Walker, 92.7 FM. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We appreciate them as always. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Interested in getting into the Mark Williams comments, but that will have to wait until the second segment because I'm also interested in getting into this Brett Siegel article, Doug, on clutch points, where he discusses all of the starting fives out there in the NBA, and he discusses the potency of it, has some comments about can LaMelo be the ultimate leader for this organization? Is he aggregating us without giving us credit? I'm just, Brett, I got my eyes on you. We put the episode out. I'm just saying. So you know what? We're going to aggregate you back, okay? We give credit when we aggregate, but we're going to aggregate you back in this weird incestual aggregation station that we'll have for the first segment, A-block material stuff. Here's what he writes at the very end of his starting five assessment. Keep a close eye on the Hornets being sneaky buyers this season, Doug. He doesn't say Doug in there. I said that. Since they have a handful of middle-tier contracts that could be packaged together to find an immediate center upgrade. He did go through the center problems that this team has. So I throw it to you. After our previous episode, going through the 20-win scenarios, 35, 40-win scenarios, could you see the Hornets possibly dabble in the buyer's pool?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I do want to recognize that this is a ridiculous question to answer right now, but that's what we do on this show. We answer things ridiculously early, and then we answer them again and again and again and again until the Hornets win. We're going to have this question until the Hornets actually win and get into the playoffs again. But I think this season is different for a couple of reasons. I think you've heard some things from the front office that sound a little less like the quote that we got from the ownership group 2 seasons ago that was like we're in the third inning of a 9-inning ball game, and more like it starting the train on the tracks of being competitive, actually going for it, not in a we're going for a title kind of way, not even in a we're going for a surefire playoff spot kind of way, but just slowly moving the train down the tracks of, hey, we're going to be competitive. And I think you're going to hear more of that. I would be surprised if we don't hear more of that, more expectation setting at Media Day for what this season is. Because I thought last season, before the Media Day and the training camp, the lead up to last season, you really had none of that. They were very careful not to set any expectations on the team. It was very much new coach. We're kind of seeing how things are, seeing what we got. You know, they've made some additions to this roster, and the additions have been unequal, right? You've got a glut in the guard space, and you don't have much in the big space. And so when you're looking at what are the credentials of a team that would be a buyer, you would say, like Siegel pointed out, you've got a lot of movable contracts. Check. You've got an unbalanced roster. Check. You've got a team that would be interested in winning more games. Check. Now we can talk about what kind of buyer they would be, because I think that could go a lot of different ways, but I think certainly you would have to put the Hornets in this early category of buyers of the deadline for all those reasons.
Yeah, I think what kind of buyers would they be? Would they be a team willing to part ways with draft picks to enhance their roster now? I think that's the real question here, because you could see getting rid of Miles Bridges on a tradable contract. I know people accuse us of trying to trade him all the time. It's just the way that it's structured that would make the most sense. So Miles could be traded for more of a youth movement, but also you get better with some depth, sending him somewhere else. I really think if you traded Miles, it'd probably be for some draft picks. So you could do it, but I don't think it would be player for player or anything like that. It could be though. So really, are you willing to get rid of the Miami pick? Whew, buddy, probably not, especially with the Tyler Hero injury. Would you be willing to get rid of the Dallas pick? I wouldn't think that. Your own picks? No, probably not that either. So it would probably have to be a player. And in that case, I think that you probably cap what kind of value you would have coming back to you. So in that sense, I don't know how much better they truly could get without trading any of the draft picks to get better this season, Doug. But yeah, the what kind of buyer are they is interesting, because I think if you're talking about sending draft capital out, that's about as buyery as it gets.
Yeah, but I don't see them making a gigantic, shocking, world-altering, NBA landscape-altering move. I don't even know if they have the capability of doing that. If they have the number of draft picks and the will to do that kind of thing, and that special situation has to come along for it to make sense for the Charlotte Hornets to do something like that, I don't think that's going to present itself at the trade deadline. What I think is probably more likely is a Gary Neal, I'm just thinking of some other names here, Courtney Lee kind of move that may be.
Gary's out of the league. I don't think you can go after Gary Neal.
No,
I think he's
not
gone.
those players. But those are the types of moves that they've made in the past. I don't think the Neal move was in a playoff season. Courtney Lee certainly was. We talk about it all the time. PJ Harrison was on the team, then it was Courtney Lee, and they go to the playoffs. So I think that's kind of the move that they make that they probably were not even thinking about making at the beginning of the season. But as the wins started to pile up and the opportunity started to present itself to make a postseason, you make a move. And so and that move is most likely going to be at the center position, but could also be, just as well be a wing defender, because this team could trade some of the offensive firepower that they've accumulated at the guard position and move, and the wing position, and move to get a wing defender. So that there are going to be multiple needs, I think, for this team. You could see multiple moves. This front office has not been real shy about making moves, mostly for draft picks. We'll see if that transfers to the trade deadline when they actually need to acquire talent.
By the way, Gary Neal, going after him, the Bobcats were 43-39 that season. So, but not because of Gary Neal. I think that's actually one of the worst, most underrated, worst moves that the Bobcats / Hornets have ever made. Yeah. What would you do? What would you do to consider yourself a buyer here? And what would that look like? You know, going after a center just to ensure some front court depth, like that would make some sense to try to, hey, we'll make a slight push for the play-in. We'll make a push for a top 6 seed if we're really feeling froggy at the beginning of the season, where we get 5, 7, 8 more wins in the first 30, 40 games of the season than we thought. Like, oh, okay, now we might really want some depth to help us out in the front court. So yeah, I could see it, especially just having this, on the heels of what we were discussing yesterday. What all has to go right? Well, if things are going right, then it probably is going right in the first half of the season. And if that's the case, then you could see, again, yourself in the buyer's pool, which would make some things pretty interesting. Like maybe you go with Gary Neal. Do they make some kind of Montrezl Harrell move that helps him out, limited player, but does help you out in the second half of the season? You're Gary Neal, I'm Montrezl Harrell. Maybe it's either one of those spaces.
Okay, and not to muddy this conversation, because it's so nice to hear that the Hornets could be buyers. It's so nice to believe that, because it means, well, it mostly means that they would be winning, that they would have the idea that they could win in the post-trade deadline, but they could just as easily be sellers, as we talked about in the last episode. If they are running at a pace of wins that looks like they're headed for another 19, 20, somewhere sub 25 win season, and they've been mostly healthy, then that means something is rotten in uptown Charlotte, and they've got to figure that out, and they could use the trade deadline as an opportunity to break this thing down in anticipation of retooling it in the summer.
By the way, also 43 and 39, the Montrezl Harrell season.
Another
those
good
teams,
name. Yeah. They've done these moves. So
they have. So, but I think those moves, I think those are good names to bring up because they're not these monumental moves, right? But what they are is sending out younger, somewhat still intriguing pieces that you capitalize on their value now before it completely diminishes, like Vernon Carey, sending him to Washington into that trade, and you attach a second-round pick, so we know the Hornets have plenty of those. Maybe you package together a few second-round picks and you keep all your first. Yeah, there are ways for the Hornets to be smart about this while also getting better in the second half of this upcoming season. This is when the hope is at an all-time high, right at the beginning, right now, September 24th.
Well, we haven't driven the car off the lot.
No.
We haven't opened the box to find out if the cat is dead or not. I mean, yes, this is the time. This is when we are at our sickest. There is no cure.
Is that Italian leather in the car? It smells great. It smells fantastic. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Mark Williams has some comments during Suns Media Day, and of course he talks a little bit about the Hornets and the trade process. Which one? It's the one when he was traded to Phoenix. What do we think about Mark Williams' comments? We'll talk about it coming up next. LOH. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however I like to bet, player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. And it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. More Locked On Hornets ahead. On Weston Walker earlier today, we were watching our normal 3 TV screens that are behind me. Wes likes to watch TV during the show, and sometimes I'll peek over my shoulder. Yeah, that's right. He watches TV instead of listens to me. It's a real
like
issue.
What? I mean, watching soap operas, watching First Take. What's he watching?
Well, I mean, it used to be when we would first turn on the TVs, Jerry Springer would still keep playing. So we had some Jerry Springer updates every now and then. Then we just basically settled on ESPN, some sports talk shows. But today,
I mean, they've kind of turned into Jerry Springer now, right?
It really has been. Yeah. Bark like a dog, Colin. Bark like a dog. So then he turns on the Disney Channel today. We had a fun discussion about cartoons that still play. But on one of the other televisions was NBA TV. And it was Mark Williams speaking to Phoenix Suns media. That was being played out there nationally. And, of course, he had some comments about the Hornets. Here's what he said. Once you traded me the first time, it was only a matter of time before I was gone. I just plan on making them regret that decision every time I step on the floor. And he says it's nice to be somewhere where I'm wanted. He did say that. Like, it's nice to be somewhere that actually values me as a player. And I see those comments. And I think this is just a good old-fashioned business is business type of situation you have, man. Mark, I could understand why he wanted to go somewhere that wanted him. I forget what the model is, but isn't there like 5 pillars of what your employee wants? One of them is to be valued.
Pillars again. Pillar alert.
Sorry, James Borrego, he rubbed off on me. But if whatever the 5 pillars are, one of those 5 in whatever model I'm thinking of that I can't think of the name right now, one of them is you want to be valued at work. That's something that employees want. So Mark Williams, no different in that regard. He gets sent out to Phoenix. Hey, Hornets don't believe that you're going to make them pay for it. You do. We'll see what happens. I completely understand Mark's sentiment on this.
I hope he does too. I hope he has a successful career. Anyone that leaves the Charlotte Hornets, look, that was a difficult situation. We get traded and then it gets rescinded and then you got to go back. That's just a difficult situation. And I felt for him at the time. And now I hope it's one of those situations where you're like, I hope you find success somewhere else because it didn't work here. And it didn't work here because it's not that the Hornets didn't want him. They wanted the version of Mark Williams that they thought they were going to get. And they never got that version of Mark Williams, partly because he wasn't available due to injury. But that was only part of it. The other part of it is that he wasn't as physical as I think they wanted him to be when he was on the floor. I think he was sometimes focused on stat accumulation and not doing some of the little things that really, honestly, it's funny that we look to our big guys for some of the littlest things that you have to do on the floor. But those little things, like box out, like get a rebound, like stay focused on the boards, those kinds of things I think were too often left on the floor for other things. And then obviously, along with the injury stuff, there was some fitness stuff. But the whole thing is, I think it was just not fitting. Their idea of what they wanted Mark to become and Mark's idea of what he wanted to become, it just wasn't the same thing. And that's always going to end badly, whether you're a professional basketball player or going back to your job analogy. Like if you go to an employer and you say, I can do X, Y, and Z, or they believe you can do X, Y, and Z, whichever it is, and you get there the first day and you can't do X, Y, and Z, there's going to be problems, and it's probably only going to end one way.
Yeah, just not a good experience with the new regime because of some of the injuries and because of what they wanted him to be that he just eventually wasn't. And you're not wrong about any of that. It's a shame. There was a lot of potential with Mark that he showed really and lived up to for the most part his rookie season. I mean, there was a lot of wow moments from him. We'll have the perimeter defense. We'll have the Celtics games. It's just those never materialized into something consistent once we got to this version of Mark after all of the injuries. And man, he became almost a different player. Like if you go back to that rookie season, so much of what we valued from him was what he did defensively. And then so much of what he became was actually a better offensive fit than what he was with the Hornets defensively. And it kind of turned itself on its head where it was just a completely different type of player that you wanted. And you weren't getting it. Yeah. You allowed 40-point efficient nights from Anthony Davis, Vucevic, Daniel Gafford. It just became bad defensively. And I thought there were stretches where he showed some consistency. I thought there was actually a decent second half to the season for him with a couple of stinkers in there, but for the most part finished somewhat well. But at that point, I think Mark was also really wanting out of the Hornets organization, and it feels like Jeff Peterson and company were willing to facilitate that.
I don't know Mark Williams. I'm only looking at a quote here, and I haven't watched the full interview. Within this quote, I do not see a lot of introspection. I do not see a lot of reflection. I see a lot of reflecting back on the people that did him wrong in his view. And so I just wonder if he really has some kind of idea of what needs to change in order for his career to move in a different direction, or if he truly believes, hey, I was doing all the right things. I just need to be with a team that appreciates those things, and bing, bang, boom, I'm going to achieve all the things that I want to achieve. I question that. I question, and I see a lot of Phoenix fans celebrating this as if they didn't just take Nick Richards, and that experiment didn't go well for them either. They acquired Nick Richards, and I saw the same kind of comments. Can't believe the Hornets let this guy go. Look at all this tape. He's going to be, no, that never materialized either. Oftentimes there are reasons that players are moved from a team. And I think there are certainly instances where that player does transform their body, transform their game. They meet a new coach, a new assistant coach that shows them something that gets through to them in a special way. This happened with Malik Monk, a name that often comes up on this show, but it just happened 2 or 3 stops later. It happens, but unless you have that introspection, unless you have that hey, sure, I do feel wronged in some way, but also there was a little bit of me in that too. What can I do? I don't know.
I do know Mark decently well. I shouldn't say that. I know Mark well enough as far as a media member that's talked to him quite a bit and talked to him tiny bit off record here and there. I knew him well enough to say hi if I saw him in the tunnel or whatever. I know that the Hornets really liked him in terms of PR staff, like people around the team loved Mark. I did too. Like I really enjoyed my conversations with him both on the microphone and off the microphone. Really fun guy, engaging. I think introspective there, right? We have some comments on our interviews with Weston Walker where I actually think he was pretty thoughtful and thorough in some of his answers and even self-aware with some of the issues that was going on. I do think just Charles, even at the beginning of the season, you heard Zach Lowe mention this. I didn't have this. I don't know how many other Hornets media members had it, but Zach Lowe discussed how all they did was praise Mark for his willingness to go the extra mile in training camp. He had this index card that was like laminated of all these goals that he wanted to achieve, and he was working really hard to go achieve those goals. And then what happens, whoever our guy is on Hornets Reddit sees him, exit some orthopedic surgeon center and he's got a boot on and he wasn't able to play until December. And it just felt like he was never able to get back on track enough consistently. Mark, I wish you all the best in Phoenix. I hope it all does really work out, but I can understand why the Hornets decided to move on when they did.
Well, and as I kind of turn this away from the past and into the present, I would say that you hope that the organization has learned from that, and that as they conducted their draft interviews with Tijan Salan and with Con Knipple and all of these folks that they were going to bring in the organization, they just have a firmer understand. This version of the front office has a firmer understanding of the kinds of players that they're getting, both from a skill set level, talent level, but also the hardest part is trying to determine, like, psychologically, like, are they going to fit the culture? Are they going to continue to work hard to get better? Do the things that they prioritize, are they the things that we prioritize as an organization? So that even if that player faces adversity, even if the team faces adversity, we all sort of know, like, we're aligned thought-wise on how to get better. And if that isn't happening, then it just causes all of these downstream effects. And I think that's ultimately what happened with Mark Williams, and hopefully doesn't happen with Tijan Salan or Con Knipple or any number of the 16 players that they drafted this season.
Yeah. All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We'll rummage through the Sicko Satchel to finish it out. Coming up next, LOH. Sicko Satchel time. We went through it a couple of episodes ago. I think we still have 2 more questions or stories to get through. I'm not the keeper. That is your responsibility. What do we got today, Doug?
I'm going to choose this one because it aligns a little bit with what we talked about in the first segment. This is from Casual Hindu of the First Lance Stevenson division. Assuming Lauri Markkanen is shopped this year, how do you feel about the fit of Lauri with Brandon and LaMelo? And if you like it, what would you give up for him? Asking price will probably be really high, but I think he's a great fit with our guys. I'd like to think that Ainge, could be talking about Danny or his son there, waits until closer to the deadline to move him. That should give us enough time to know if LaMelo will be healthy and if Miller will be more and everything that we hope. If both are true, it's worth exploring.
Yeah, so I think if you're the Hornets, are you willing to make your move a little bit earlier than what most people have you pegged, or when most people pegged you to make that move? Yeah, that wasn't worded correctly, but you get the idea. So it feels like it's still a little too early for them to go after Lauri Markkanen, because here we are talking about attaching draft capital to whatever you're sending out to match salary in order to go get a guy like Lauri, or making a monster type of trade. This would qualify as that. I think Lauri Markkanen on the move for any team would be one of the bigger moves made at the trade deadline. So what would it take to get him? I think Casual Hindu is right. I think you are talking about at least 3 first-rounders. Utah, they seem to want 130 cents on the dollar, and it feels like they're going to try to feast off of a sense of urgency any of these franchises have to make the postseason. Well, this franchise would like to make the postseason. Maybe this is a team that overperforms the first half, and then they feel the sense of urgency. Hey, we're right here. We need to go now. now's the time to push the chips in. And Jeff Peterson even discussed that in one of the snippets to open up Hornets Real Access this offseason. Would he deem the deadline after overperforming in the first half the time to put all of his chips in and get rid of, I don't know, Mavs pick, Heat pick, all the assets I just talked about? That would be a lot. It probably would not be the move that I would want them to make. At the same time, this is where I find it a little tricky with stuff that we've talked about previously, Doug, because I would like to see you make somewhat of a risk or take somewhat of a risk. I would like to see you go after one of those guys and beat these other teams to the punch, and then it work out for you, and then we get to celebrate. Oh, man, nobody thought that was going to work as well as it did. But, man, excellent job by Jeff Peterson. There are other teams that NBA pundits have discussed are better Lauri Markkanen teams, but I wonder what national NBA writers would think about this, because he's not wrong. Brandon, Lauri, LaMelo, it's a lot of length from 1 to 3. Lauri playing the 4. Like, there's some fun stuff to do there.
Yes, it would be early, but doesn't that make it the perfect time to make a move? Like, do it when it's least expected. Don't do it when everyone is anticipating it, because that's when prices can get run up. I think you sneak up on the league a little bit and work with a partner in Utah who you previously worked with. One would think that they have a great relationship. They've already gotten one deal done for Kyle and Sexton. That helped. That helped the team out. That helped Utah out because they needed to get out from under some of the veterans so that they could really focus on their young players. So like both sides, even though people really viewed that as an unequal deal in favor of the Hornets, I think both sides did get something out of the deal. So I think, man, it would be tough, because I think if you look at, and Eurobasket is not NBA, but man, I mean, Lauri Markkanen was one of the players that really stood out in Eurobasket, that was filled with great international NBA talent like Giannis and Luka and Şengün and all of these players. Lauri was a standout, and I think he got Finland to the semis for the first time in their history, and he was out there scoring like 40, 48. I mean, he was a beast offensively, which, would align with what the team is now, but it's like, man, I wish this team were better defensively. Like, if they had a few more wing defenders, I'd be on here screaming, Lauri, Lauri, Lauri. I think he's expanded his game defensively, but yeah, that's without a dominant, physical, big center, be tough. It'd be tough to bring in Lauri. It's not even, to me, it's not early from a talent perspective. It's early from a roster construction perspective. Like the roster itself doesn't make much sense for Lauri. I could be convinced otherwise, I think, pretty easily, because I'm just desperate for talent on this team. Somebody could come along and say, look, you stink. Lauri will make you not stink. It was the Rudy Gobert argument. Like, Rudy Gobert has problems, but, he goes to teams and they win 50 games. Well, Lauri doesn't help teams win 50 games, but he is super talented.
Well, that's that. I guess, yeah, I don't know if we should skip over that part, I guess. If he doesn't help you win 50 games, then maybe he's not worth the 3 firsts that the Jazz would be asking for.
I almost made this joke yesterday when we were talking about 40 games, which is, if the Hornets win 40 games, what will it mean? I will give them 50 wins. If they win 40, I'll give them the extra 10. It will be like winning 50 games in my mind. It's something that I desperately want them to win 50 games again, but I would count it as a 50-win season if they won 40.
It might as well be. Might as well be a 50-win
might
season.
Might as well be 60. I'm so outside the realm of what I've been used to.
Yeah. Is it the risk? I think he's making, just looking at the payroll real quickly, with the Jazz right now, he'd be making $46 million. So he's making 46 now, 46 the next year, 49 3 years from now, 53 4 years from now. He is 28 years old, but the last thing I'll say is, with the collective bargaining agreement, the pay structure, the way it is, all the aprons and all of the aprons, right? We have seen these teams give in to just going ahead and trading these 4 first-round picks in order to get your Desmond Baines or your Mikal Bridges. Now, the Grizzlies wanted to get out of the pay structure, and they decided to welcome the first 4 round picks or the 4 first round picks in exchange for not paying everybody all of this money. Like, I do wonder, with the pay structure, would you be okay with paying LaMelo max money? He's on your books for a long time. Lauri would be on your books for a long time. Brandon's coming up. And if we think, we just went through his contract scenario episode, if Brandon's coming up, there's a ton of cash going to those 3 being your quote-unquote big 3. So I think that's the question with Lauri Markkanen. Are you willing to give up lots of firsts to make your move? And when you do it, you've got 2 guys on your books for the long term and 1 guy coming up. 1 guy's coming up. Do you get out of that by just trading LaMelo if you really wanted to? You wouldn't trade Brandon with us agreeing to pay him already. But, like, man, that's 3 $50 million contracts. Is that something this Hornets team would be willing to go for, especially with ownership not being the richest of owners? We're not Steve Ballmer over here. Yeah, I don't know. I think after thinking of the pay structure, Doug, I don't think they would do it, and I understand why they might not do it, because you're going all in on that being your big 3, and I don't think that's a big 3 to get you 50 wins consistently.
If you're going to give me a big who, like a 7-footer who has some defensive issues and makes $40+ million a year, honestly would rather them just go get Sabonis, because I think Sabonis is a more creative playmaker. And having that playmaking from the center position is something that can facilitate some of the other shooters in a way that takes some pressure off of LaMelo Ball to do that a little bit, and probably just allows him to operate a little bit more freely than he has in the past, and gives him a good screen setter too. So, like, yeah, I mean, Lauri, very talented player, but I think they're early. I think there are some options that are gettable that would make a little bit more sense for the current roster. So, yeah, I guess I'm out.
Yeah, man, 50, $150 million a year tied up in those 3 guys. That'd be too much. I think once you think about that part of it, I think I'm out. Yeah, and I'm not.
And honestly, like, if Brandon Miller this season, if he just becomes, oh, wow, this guy could compete for Defensive Player of the Year, like if he just takes a huge defensive leap, okay, I mean, maybe I could start to get talked into it. But when you're talking about your 2 best scorers not being defensive anchors, you don't have a defensive anchor at the center position, it starts to get really difficult to make that justification.
Maybe this is where we tie the bow on it. Got to figure out what you have in Brandon Miller before you make a move like that.
Any move.
Maybe that's
any significant move.
Yeah. All right, coming up tomorrow on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Not today, not another segment because we're done. But coming up tomorrow on the Locked On Hornets podcast, perhaps we ask and think of some questions we would like to discuss with some of the Hornets members when Hornets host Media Day on Monday. So, yeah, we can start to think of some of that, plus continue to put some questions in the Sicko Satchel. Where can they do it, Doug?
Join subtext.com/Locked On Hornets.
Also subscribe to everyhornetsboxscore.com and watch Yahoo Sports Daily with Jason Fitz and Caroline Fenton. Doug is a producer on that show. Golf clap. New producer on that show. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Sports Radio 92.7 WFNZ. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.